I came up with the idea of Fearless, the podcast, because I had burnt out. So the idea of doing a podcast has been with me for years. But it was only after burnout that I decided that I wanted to center courage, conviction, and connection. Because we're speaking in the middle of a global COVID pandemic. And that pandemic has thrown up all sorts of anxieties for people. People have lost their jobs, they've lost loved ones, they've lost livelihoods, they've lost homes. But even before that, I think around the world, we would agree that there is increasing polarization and division. Politically, we're not doing better than we were, say, 5 years ago. Income inequalities are exacerbated. We've seen the worst of ourselves and nation-state behavior with COVID. Look at the arguments over vaccines, and people trying to grab them, and then what will the poor countries do, and how will we ensure that everyone in the world has access to a vaccine? And so the idea of Fearless came from my burnout ending, where even though I am described as being fearless in the way that I present and the way that I go about my job, found that I had become quite fearful and anxious. It celebrates people who are or have been in the arena, people who are battered, bruised, scarred because they tried to make a difference. They tried to do what is just and what is good for all of us. And what that does is that as we reimagine and rebuild in the post-pandemic era, it allows us to take the example from people who have stayed true to their beliefs, to their conviction, to connect with them and with each other as we set about crafting societies that work for everybody, including the most marginalized, the most vulnerable, so that we're building societies that are based on dignity and kindness, compassion, care, respect, where we can't do well if the least among us is not doing well. So that's Fearless, the podcast with me, Uduak Amimo.